Welcome back to Wednesday Ramblings to all my Ravio geeks. This week we are going to discuss the X-Men storyline that has been going on for the past few years. Now I'm mostly going to be referring to the overall storyline of the X titles themselves, not specific books. And be aware that there's a lot of stuff out there that I have not read. I'm just discussing what I know as well as what I have read. So if you're not familiar with what has been going on in the past few years, it's been revealed that Moira McTaggart is not actually a human ally to the mutants. She herself is a mutant who has a odd ability where she has multiple lifelines, I guess you would say. She'll live for a while. When she dies, she reverts back into her child. So she's lived all these alternate um, lives, and she remembers everything that she experienced. And so, one thing that she has learned throughout all of this is that pretty much mutants never win. They're always eventually overcome, I believe, by sentinels and robotic type enemies, I think, is kind of the stick there. But along with Professor X and Magneto, they come up with the idea to create a mutant safe haven on Krakoa. Now, they've done kind of mutant countries before with Genosha and stuff like that, but this has been the most successful one so far, I believe. On top of that, they have actually essentially gained immortality, or at least something resembling immortality. They have learned that using the combined skills of 5 specific mutants, Egg, Proteus, Tempest, I think her name is, Elixir, and Hope Summers, they, as well as using the backup mental files from Cerebro, they are able to recreate any mutant that dies. Egg can create eggs. He used to be called Gold Balls, but they changed his name because he creates these eggs that I believe can essentially house living tissue. And using Mr. Sinister's DNA samples, they're able to essentially, if a mutant dies, or technically a mutant doesn't have to die to do this, but the rules of Krakoa are that when a mutant dies, they use eggs to begin recreating the person, using Tempest's abilities to speed up the aging process, and I believe Elixir's ability, or he can manipulate biological matter. Usually he uses it to heal, but I think he can use other stuff. I guess somehow Proteus's reality warping powers come in, and I think Hope kind of boosts their powers or mimics their powers. I don't fully know, but anyway, essentially they are able to recreate a mutant, and so now mutants no longer stay dead. I was going to say they no longer die. No, they die. They're just brought back. I would argue that it's not really resurrection. It's more of just cloning, but that's the storyline. Now, on Krakoa, there is what is called the Quiet Council. These are the 12 rulers of the nation. It's a I don't want to say democracy exactly, but there are 4 different chairs named around the seasons: winter, summer, spring, and fall, or yeah, whatever. Um, and I don't remember exactly which ones do which, but one of them consists of people who are typically viewed as villains, some who are typically viewed as heroes. There is the business side, as well as the kinds who are able to mentally influence people. So in the beginning, like there was Professor X, Magneto, and Apocalypse as the 3 politicians, type. But the Quiet Council has changed over time. And so the current members, who are the focus of the series Immortal X-Men, are Magneto, Destiny, and Hope Summers, Exodus, Mystique, and Mr. Sinister, Sebastian Shaw, Emma Frost, and Kitty Pryde, and then Nightcrawler, Storm, and Colossus. Um, so when Krakoa began, Moira's main condition for all of this was that she remained anonymous. She didn't want people to know she's a mutant, and she did not want any any mutants with precognitive powers to be resurrected, because they would potentially see that no matter what, mutants would lose. This didn't make sense to me, because a character like Destiny, even if she sees that, she's going to manipulate it to her advantage, so she's probably not going to go around telling people that, hey, we're going to lose. Destiny tries to... her visions aren't perfect, but they give her knowledge, and she then tries to push things in a certain way. So I don't feel like she would actually come forward and say, hey, this is all doomed, but a big part of that is probably that Moira holds a vendetta against Destiny. Because in one of the timelines, Moira created what was essentially a mutant cure, and the Destiny of that timeline had Pyro burn her alive, warning her, don't ever recreate this cure or I will come after you. I'll see it coming and I will come and kill you again. So she actually hates Destiny. And at the end of the Inferno event from last year, Destiny was resurrected. Professor X and Magneto held it off as long as possible, but Mystique, tired of waiting on her wife to be resurrected, kind of manipulated things behind the scenes and was able to get her resurrected anyway, which is how Destiny is now on the Quiet Council. Mystique and Destiny actually used one of Forge's weapons to remove Moira's mutant ability so that they could kill her without her ever being resurrected. Granted, they were afraid, or Moira was afraid this might be her last lifeline, because Destiny had warned her that she had a limited amount of lifelines. But they planned to just flat out kill her. Unfortunately for them, Krakoa is sentient and communicates with Cypher. And Cypher showed up to prevent them from killing her, because killing a human, which Moira now was, is against the laws of Krakoa. And they can't just kill Cypher to shut him up, because A, Cypher will be resurrected, because he's important for communicating with Krakoa, and they can't kill Krakoa itself, so even if they kill Cypher, Krakoa would just tell Cypher as soon as he's resurrected. So they had to allow Moira to leave. Moira, during an event called, I think, either the X Lives of Wolverine or X Devs of Wolverine, maybe both. She's essentially, she has somehow placed her consciousness in, I think, a robotic body or something. I'm not entirely sure, but she's, I guess, I've heard her described as kind of like the X-Men's version of Ultron now. And in the lead up to the AXE Judgment Day miniseries, she allegedly killed Mary Jane. I don't follow Spider-Man, so I don't know if she actually did. She impersonated Mary Jane and gave the impression that she killed her, but I don't know if she actually did. Now, along the way, there's been a few different series. My favorite of the series, I think it only lasted like 9 issues or so, but it was X Factor. North Star gathered a team which included my favorite character, Prodigy, who I want to do an episode about at some point. But basically, their entire purpose was to investigate any time a mutant disappeared or died, because they didn't want to resurrect anyone who was still alive. Which is also why I say it's not resurrection, it's cloning, because you can't resurrect the person if they're still alive. So, that was my favorite series, and it played into the Trial of Magneto storyline. In that storyline, the Scarlet Witch was killed during the Hellfire Gala. And so X Factor investigated to find out who did it. And Toad was found guilty. I forget exactly how they thought he had the ability to kill her, but essentially Wanda manipulated it to die on her own. because she knew she'd be brought back, and somehow she made it where the mutants can now actually resurrect mutants whose consciousness was never a part of Cerebro, people from way back. So that's allowed them to resurrect characters like Thunderbird, who've been gone for a very long time. Um, so that was my favorite storyline. One of the storylines that I really, really think is super stupid is that they've revealed that any mutant who dies in Otherworld is, if they're resurrected, they don't come back correctly. This was learned when Rockslide was killed there. And when he came back, I think they described it as like different versions of, because of where he died, different versions of him through the multiverse wound up in the resurrection. So he comes back wrong. This makes no sense because he's not actually resurrected. He's a clone. They are using the consciousness from Cerebro itself. So Cerebro does not care where the person dies because Cerebro doesn't even know where he dies. It does automatic scanning of their consciousness. So, like, literally, the consciousness that goes in there, it's just from anywhere. This is not an actual, true resurrection, so it makes no sense for... Oh, I've got a fly buzzing around me. It makes no sense for a character's... the location of their death to in any way impact their resurrection. So I hate that idea. That is... I'm sorry, that's just ridiculously stupid. So we're going to finish up this episode talking about the recent big event that just went on, AXE Judgment Day. In this, Druig of the Eternals, after learning that the mutants can resurrect themselves, decides that the only Eternals should be eternal, and that mutants are now deviants. So he launches a war against the X-Men. It involves the Avengers. How? I don't know why they're there, honestly. Just... Mostly, I've just read the main series. I haven't read a lot of the offshoots, but they serve like no purpose. The Avengers do to the storyline. A lot of the parts that involve them, they could have just used someone else. Iron Man could have been replaced by Beast or someone else like that. The Eternals themselves, there's a few of them who do not agree with Druig's decision. And so they decided to help the X-Men, and somehow, in a storyline that I think is ridiculous. I'm probably going to mispronounce his name, and I apologize for that, but Kieran Gillen does a storyline where Mr. Sinister, Iron Man, and a couple of the Eternals essentially create a new Celestial, who then kind of goes off the rails. He decides that he's going to judge all of humanity, which does include mutants, and if there are more people who fail his judgment than pass, he's going to destroy everyone on Earth. Captain America dies in the storyline. I guess that's why the Avengers are in it, because they wanted to do the first instant of resurrecting a non-mutant. The Council has always ruled against that. Exodus, who is a religious zealot, is strongly against it. He thinks that only mutants should be resurrected. And I guess they wanted to show that they can do that too. Captain America dies, he gets resurrected. Strangely, maybe I'm mistaken, but I thought they referred to him as the first non-mutant to be resurrected, which is wrong, because the Scarlet Witch was resurrected. The Five went against the Quiet Council's vote and resurrected her. That's why there was a version of her who was acting super weird, like all lovey-dovey with Vision, who she wasn't even together with when she died. And this was from an old Cerebro file from back when Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch were still considered to be mutants, so Cerebro was still scanning them. So, I don't know, I just did not like the storyline at all. It did introduce some interesting concepts in other books. Like, we did see Sebastian Shaw, even though he thought there was a decent chance he was going to die, he was still maneuvering in the background to come out ahead if he survived. And I think my favorite of the things I read along the side was Destiny came up with a plan. that would I forget exactly what it would potentially blow up and kill the Celestial, but numerous people from a specific section of the world, I forget where, maybe the Nordic countries, I don't remember, but millions of people would die. And so she kind of had a vision of who on the Quiet Council would vote for this plan and who would vote against. And she was surprised that Colossus was against it no matter what, whereas Mystique was actually more in favor of the plan if people died than if they didn't. And Destiny thought to herself, "I love her, but man, that's screwed up." Um, so I did kind of like how it impacted certain people, but the overall storyline itself was a complete dud to me. It accomplished very little other than, I guess, now the Avengers know that the X-Men can and will, if the need arises, resurrect them. And also there was a character who was killed off that was not resurrected and is not going to be resurrected, at least not immediately. But I very meh storyline. And calling it meh is being pretty generous, honestly. It's weird because I've mostly liked Immortal X-Men, except I was disappointed by the Exodus issue, which sucks because I was actually super excited to see the issue mostly devoted to him. It was mostly just tied into AXE, and it didn't work for me. And Sebastian Shaw, who I'm not as interested in, his did work for me. One thing I do want to mention is I do think there's a bit of an oversight on some things. Like, I've mentioned before that my favorite character is Prodigy, and I feel like he should definitely play a bigger part in the Marvel Universe given what his mutant power is. Granted, they've been inconsistent with what his power is. Originally, he automatically took on all the knowledge of the people around him, basically learned skills. So he would pick up your fighting styles. If you spoke another language, he now could, while in your vicinity. For a while, he could no longer remember that. He didn't retain the knowledge. After he lost his mutant powers, the Stepford Cuckoos removed the mental block that prevented him from retaining knowledge. So essentially, when they did that, that gave him all the knowledge that he previously had. He regained that knowledge. And now he has regained his mutant powers, which when a mutant who was depowered is resurrected, they're resurrected back with their powers. So basically, everyone who lost their powers in M-Day essentially has their powers back unless they've never been resurrected. So I kind of described Prodigy's powers. That's how his powers were to begin with. Various writers have actually misconstrued his powers, and they've kind of made it where it's more like he now knows just about anything. Not just learned knowledge. Like in X Factor, I loved X Factor, but the writer did misuse his powers. There's a moment when iBoy is able to see DNA or something on a body, and Prodigy automatically absorbs that. That's not something iBoy learned. That's something he saw. They also did, if I'm not mistaken, I think Kieran Gillen is the one who was writing Young Avengers when he decided to have Prodigy come out as bisexual. And he wrote a story in, I think, last year's Marvel Pride that detailed how Prodigy came to realize he was bisexual. And it was essentially, and this was weird, it was essentially that he kind of gained the knowledge of how Kitty Pryde felt whenever Colossus walked by. It was weird. It is not a learned skill. It's not something he should pick up. But so, because people have shown that he does now gain knowledge that's not really a learned skill, I feel like he should know more than he does. Like, he should basically know everything Krakoa knows. So he should know the, about Moira, that Mystique and Destiny tried to kill her. He should know that Mr. Sinister has a bunch of Moira clones in his hideaway. I mean, this is an exceptionally smart person, even before his powers. And I honestly feel like he should be portrayed as the smartest character of all. But he's usually ignored in favor of, like, Moon Girl and others. I really wish they'd do more with him. So that's going to do it for now. I probably won't do the Prodigy episode because I covered a lot of that right here at the end, and I feel like it fits here more than a full Wednesday Ramley. So I just wanted to get that out. This is an episode I've been planning on pretty much since I started the channel almost 3 months ago, but just haven't gotten around to it. So I hope you enjoyed, and you like and subscribe and leave a comment below. I'm Robbie O'Leaf, and I am Robbie O'Leaving.